Welcome back to the NJCPA Tech Talk podcast, brought to you by the Emerging Technologies Interest Groups. I'm your host, Sean Stein Smith, and we're up to episode 8. Believe it or not, it's our 8th episode. All right, so before we get into our conversation here today, just a quick background about me, in case you haven't heard of me by now. I do a whole host of work in the blockchain crypto space. I'm on the boards of 3 entities out there right now, operating out there, have a column at Forbes and all of that good stuff. I won't bore you though, really with any more info about me, because actually today I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, Nicole DeRosa, who is a senior tax manager at Wiss and Company. But more on the point of it, and I will hand it over to her for a more in-depth introduction, background on her firm, all the rest. Actually, today on the 8th episode of the NJCPA Tech Talk podcast, it's the first time I am having on as a guest a fellow FDU former student, alum, graduate, and all of that good stuff. So I'm very amped to have you here today, and I'll turn it over to you for an introduction of you and your firm and all of that good stuff, Nicole.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me, and go FDU Devils.
Wait, Devils? Hold on.
Florham Park.
Wait a second. You went to the other campus. All right, cancel this. You gotta
it still counts.
Stop the podcast. I'm kidding.
It still counts. So yes, FDU alum, whether it's Teaneck or Florham Park, whatever. We're still both from FDU, so that's cool. Yes, my name is Nicole DeRosa. I'm a senior tax manager at Wiss in Florham Park, literally across the street from the Florham Park campus, which is kind of funny because it's literally like a full circle for me. I've been literally doing tax and only tax. I'm a one-trick pony. I've never touched an audit in my life. It's kind of one of my fun facts, I guess. Usually when accountants go into public accounting, I feel like they do both. At least even as their internship, they do both. I just went right into tax. I never literally have touched an audit, unless it's an IRS audit. I'm helping on the tax side, but hopefully nobody ever has to go through one of those. So yep, 12 plus years now, I've been practicing tax, and I do teach Zumba on the side. Everyone has to have, their side hustle or their stress reliever, and Zumba fitness is mine. So that's kind of a fun fact.
What's your Twitter handle, by the way?
Zumba CPA chick.
Okay, just want to get that out there.
I thought it was when I made it up. I was like, oh, this has a nice little jingle or ring to it, and I'm still, I still like it. It's self-explanatory. Zumba.
Absolutely.
CPA, I'm a girl, so But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, perfect. So what I honestly want to sort of have you sort of help us try to get our heads around it, arms around it, is obviously, right now, August 2021, there's a lot going on, right? There are bills being entered into Congress, being pulled back, edits being put forward, being approved, not approved, all the rest. But from a tax point of view, right? Are there any hot button issues, or actually, what are those hot button issues, hot topics, sort of top of mind issues right now for you and your firm?
So, obviously, the main headliner right now is the current bill that was signed by Senate, passed, and is on its way to the House, and the budget reconciliation that is also out there in signage land. So we know in the tax arena that there are going to be significant changes that are coming down the chute. It's just a matter of when are they going to hit, and what is the actual timing of them, i.e. retroactive back to April, retroactive back to May, post 12/31. We don't know. There's a lot of hearsay. So Google is great, but the problem with Google is, well, obviously it's everything and everything, and things are skewed whether it's one way or another. There's a lot of opinions rather than actual facts. So we have to be careful when we're looking at that. Tax research, obviously, we'll get into that a little bit later. But
awesome, great tax research always makes for
talk a little
great
bit about
podcast.
That. Don't want to bore you.
Right.
But obviously the hot button issue right now, obviously the current bill, capital gains rates are going to skyrocket. especially the real estate arena. We have potential 1031 deferral limitations, step up in basis limitations. We have a potential, there's rumors about the SALT cap even being lifted. There's a lot of changes that are coming down the hopper. PPP forgiveness, that's a biggie too, because now obviously our round 2 second draw loans, we're entering into that stage. And employee retention credit looks like it's also going to be kind of truncated. So there's a lot of changes that, have been implemented by the CARES Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act and all the crazy tax bills that were literally 4 tax bills in last year alone that are going to be now tweaked again. So that's kind of at the forefront right now. I would say there's so many other issues within there. Outside of the bill issues, significant processing delays over at the IRS and pretty much every taxing jurisdiction on the state level. People who filed, my parents, I'll just use them as an example. They had a little bit of a recovery rebate credit claimed in their return, and it took them a full 16 weeks to get their tax refund. They were in the black hole of the other 39 million Americans whose tax returns are basically being reviewed by the IRS manually. So we're seeing significant processing delays over at the IRS. We're seeing processing delays over at our great state of New Jersey, and just other states obviously are experiencing the same thing. So we have a lot of issues, which they're not making our job easy. Just because everyone's having issues, everyone's calling the same phone number, there's only X amount of people that are answering those phones. So it's hard to get things kind of resolved. And like I said, things are just constantly changing, and keeping up with those changes to provide the best client service we could possibly provide is obviously very important to do.
Absolutely. And probably to hone in just on one sort of item that you had outlined earlier on, this whole impact of all these bills and changes that are in the pipeline on the hopper right now, those actual dates as to when they come into effect. So if these changes are done on a retroactive basis, how would that impact the income tax filing year for 2020 and for 2021? I would assume not well, based on your reaction.
I'm one of those people that like to, under promise, over deliver, or expect the worst, because obviously if the worst happens, then you're not disappointed. Sure. So with regard to that, let's take into consideration the capital gains potential increase. There's talk of that being retroactive back to April. So right now, long-term capital gains are taxed at a preferential rate of up to 20%. Current proposal is that, depending on, if you're a high income earner, it might be going up to 39.6% highest rate. Obviously, that's a significant difference, but being that it's potentially retroactive back to April, what happens to all those long-term capital gains that happened in January, February, and March? They're taxed at 20%. Anything after April is going to be taxed at the new rate, the higher rate. So we have almost like a bifurcated year, potentially. It's all still remains to be seen. We don't know. But obviously, since things are happening later and later in the game, this isn't slated to even be passed until potentially mid-September, which realistically speaking, I don't think it's going to be passed until October, maybe even November. So we have less and less time to kind of plan and kind of figure things out. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it just because I think it's going to be reality.
Here we go. Making news here.
I wouldn't be surprised if the tax deadline is extended again, which would, I don't want that to happen. I don't think any tax practitioner wants it to happen, but at the end of the day, we need substantial time to make sure that we're filing complete and accurate returns for our clients. And, with the complexity, that's just, everything just keeps changing later and later. I don't foresee an April 15th deadline anymore. And I hate saying that. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But reality, and hopefully it doesn't happen. Because if it doesn't happen, then I can be really happy, and that would just be great. But I'm preparing for the worst.
Absolutely, yeah. And so on top of that whole mess, right? Basically, all of us have also been impacted and are actually being impacted right now by this whole sort of work from home, working off-site type of trend. And so how has that impacted, right, the workflows of you, internal colleagues, and external clients?
So, I mean, I feel like it's a catch-22 because, if you had to drive an hour to and from your job on a daily basis, you're saving 2 hours out of your day, 5 days a week. That's 10 hours a week of time. So, I mean, technically, you can kind of be more efficient and you get those hours back. Maybe not every day you're taking those 2 hours and you're working, but some days you're definitely taking those extra 2 hours and you're working. So, in my mind, you're almost becoming kind of more efficient in the sense that you get more hours out of the day to work. But it also limits the face-to-face interaction on a daily basis. I mean, obviously, yes, we can Zoom all we want. We can do Teams meetings and virtually see people all we want, but there is something that is lost, I feel personally, with the interaction face-to-face in person. Obviously, with the shift to more of a remote working environment, clients aren't necessarily using snail mail as much anymore. There's been a shift to kind of more electronic delivery, when we ask clients for, their tax documents, they're not going to send in a letter anymore. They're not going to send in, a package. They're going to upload it to, every accounting firm has their own kind of cloud program, if you will. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I mean, I feel like there's been a shift significantly to electronic delivery, electronic methods, and obviously, virtual meetings, which again, catch-22, meetings are so much more easier to have now just because you don't have to really plan as much. You don't have to reserve a conference room. You don't have to, factor in traffic. You can just hop in a Teams meeting or hop in a Zoom's meeting. And it's that much easier almost to coordinate as a result. You don't have kind of all the moving parts that you had in the past. But again, there's that part that you're missing just because you're not in person sitting across a table anymore, as frequently. I mean, I will have a client meeting in a couple of weeks, but I did have my first in-person post-COVID, or I'm not even sure if I can say post-COVID right now, but my first in-person client meeting since the pandemic hit. And, we all sat at each end of the conference table,
Sure.
socially distanced, but it was nice to actually be in a meeting physically with the client and other colleagues. So it was kind of exciting in a weird way.
No, and I would just add there that if you are actually gaining back 8 to 10 hours each week, that also opens up the door for more education, more podcasts like the NJCPA TechTalk podcast. So
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there is more. I mean, and that's another thing. I do a lot of teaching, and it's so much easier now for people to attend training sessions just because they're literally at the tip. They're at your fingertips, and you don't have to go physically drive to a classroom setting to sit in on a training. I mean, obviously, yes, sitting in on an 8-hour webinar is a little bit more painful than sitting in a classroom for 8 hours. But if your professor or teacher structures it the right way, it can be just as effective.
Yeah. Yes, I would say so too. But I would also say that doing anything for 8 hours, be it taxes, be it crypto, be it anything, that's a long time for anything, in person or online.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
And so, obviously, the last 18 months going on 20 months soon of this whole COVID thing has really sort of forced everybody, right? Tech forward people, tech backward people, and all the rest to really become more comfortable using all kinds of technology tools, right? For work, personal lives, all the rest. But are there any tools, any sort of technology applications, tools, programs that you come across during this time frame that have really sort of popped out as good, easy to use, and actually helpful?
So, I mean, for me, I mentioned tax research earlier because, I mean, I hate tax research. I don't know anyone that actually thoroughly enjoys tax research. If you enjoy it, good for you, more power to you. But to me, it's a little painful, and by little, I mean a lot. So, if I can Google something and get the right answer, if it brings me back to like the IRS plain English website area, that'd be great. But I found RIA Checkpoint we use at WIS, that has kind of been, not kind of been, it has been extremely helpful, specifically with regard to, the states constantly following the Fed, not following the Fed, with regard to the PPP loan forgiveness and the PPP expenses. It was constantly changing on a daily basis. And states were getting on board a little bit later in the game, but RIA has smart charts, which are extremely user-friendly, extremely easy to create, and they really came in handy, I would say, specifically for all things PPP I'm going to say this past busy season, just because of the rapid changes, and we needed to obviously implement them on a timely manner. So RIA Checkpoint was really good with regard to the smart charts. I found myself utilizing them more than ever in my entire career. When I was at my prior accounting firm, RIA, we used that as well, but I didn't really use it as much unless I absolutely had to. I actually purposefully logged into RIA this year and used it. So it was more intentional. I've been finding that clients, being that they are obviously shifting more towards electronic, we've been using Tax Caddy for them to, securely upload their documents. It's relatively user friendly, at least I found, and several of my clients have found, who literally, I have a client, he's probably pushing 90 at this point. He actually is able to upload to Tax Caddy, which I think is very impressive. That a 90-year-old man can actually figure it out and do it. He's quite savvy for 90 years old. And it just goes to show you, again, it's very user-friendly, and somebody that's, a little bit older, they're not necessarily as readily providing information electronically. They like to provide things in the mail, more so than through email or electronically. So for this person, and also I've seen the trend, people are just shifting to electronic. ShareFile has also been a pretty popular one. They're secure. I have seen obviously an uptick, as I'm sure you've seen an uptick with, people trying to impersonate and, phishing emails, which we all obviously have to be very careful because they do look so real. But I think that's just kind of in general where anything accounting related is going, because we have a wealth of information. We have social security numbers, we have dates of births, we have addresses, and we have banking information. What more could a hacker want? So very important to keep an eye out for those. Sending out tax returns, we use SafeSend, which again, it's electronic. So the tax return goes to the client electronically, client signs it electronically. Then there's a notification that's sent to the electronic filer. We push a button, the return goes up to the cloud, and it's great. Again, they could download the PDF. It's very user friendly, and it's almost kind of, I'm not going to say automated, but it kind of is, in the sense that when somebody electronically signs, it sets off kind of a chain of events and files the return. So again, another tax software program that we've been using more and more, just because those returns filed, people don't necessarily want the paper copies of the returns anymore. Some people still do, but most we're seeing don't. And obviously, we talked about this a little bit already, but the meetings, Teams, Zoom, it's become like a way of life, essentially, I feel like. So those platforms in themselves have, I feel like everybody knows what Zoom is now. And if they don't, they're definitely probably in the minority there. Whether it's for Zoom for school, for their kids, Zoom for, meetings at work. I feel like we all, unfortunately, know Zoom very well, and Teams as well. I know I was teaching Zumba on Teams when everything was shut down. I was teaching Zoom Zumba and Zoom and Team Zumba, just because everyone was on it.
Yeah. Wow. So there are plenty of tools, plenty of options out there, right? And yeah. I would assume that there are tools that are options for every size firm, right? Large, medium, absolutely. Small. Yeah.
Yeah, like RIA Checkpoint is like the biggie, but there's also, Bloomberg, CC8, like there's, if there's a SafeSend, there's something else, like a Tax Caddy, there's something else to complement. there's so many of them out there, and I'm sure, every firm uses a different one or something similar at least. Because at this point, if you're an accounting firm, you need to offer that type of a service. You need to offer an electronic option. If you don't, you might want to look into that like yesterday, just because the shift is going, and I wouldn't say it's going, it's already here. The shift has already happened.
No, and the only other comment that I would add there is that really this whole pivot towards having products and services be customized, personalized, and on demand has happened in every other aspect of work and our home life. So if our industry, if our field is the only one not doing it, that's not good for us.
No, that's not. And in order to kind of keep up, we need to obviously evolve and we need to adapt. Because if you don't, then you're going to be stuck behind, and everything is just, the world's going to keep going. Things are going to keep, moving forward. And you don't want to be kind of that one person stuck behind on your own little island when everything else has already moved on forward, because that's just a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely right. And just to try to wrap up here, are there any other, tips, ideas, advice you would give either to firms or to individuals at those firms trying to navigate, basically, right? Either from an audit point of view, tax point of view, or external client advisory point of view right now, with all of these changes from government, regulation, healthcare, technology, all of that. So it's a very easy question, I think, for you. So
it is, but it's kind of like, well, first, I kind of feel like it's almost a two-pronged question, right?
Okay.
So my biggest thing is, I would say, try to just remain open, open to change, open to trying new things. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Try something else, but at least be open to it. Because again, if you don't at least try to adapt, try to evolve, try to shift a little bit, again, it's a recipe for disaster. So, I consider myself more old school. People watching this are probably going to look at me and be like, yeah, no, you're millennial. But I don't have
a millennial.
I don't have a millennial mentality. I have more of an older school mentality. I like that face-to-face interaction. I don't like to just send an email and call it a day. But you got to be kind of, open to the shift and the change, and electronic is, again, things are just happening a lot faster nowadays when they weren't, 10, 15 years ago. So be open to the change, try it, don't just knock it down. And also with regard to, obviously we're going to see a significant tax change again. So I would just say, just try to stay as on top of it as you can. And I'm going to like look back at this podcast. I'm going to laugh at myself for this, just because when I first started out, I hated reading about tax. I hated reading tax articles. I was like, this is boring. I'd rather read about something else. But in order to kind of stay abreast, especially now, you kind of have to you have to stay on top of it, because if you try to just do it all in one shot, it's not going to happen, because there's just so much content and so much changing on a daily basis. So just try to keep on top of it as much as possible. Read tax articles, find somebody that you actually enjoy reading, an author that you enjoy reading their material, and stick with them. At least you'll get some information out of them. And whenever they write something, there's plenty of I'm even say Twitter, if you look and follow the hashtag tax Twitter, there's a lot of valuable information even there. And that's an informal kind of read, if you will, but at least it's keeping you abreast of the constantly changing tax arena. And it's kind of like, it's social media, so it's not as obviously dry as reading like a IRC code section. So that would be my advice.
Excellent tips there. And now for just a few housekeeping items before we actually wrap up today's episode. The NJCPA Tech Talk podcast is available on every application where we have podcasts hosted on. And we're also on our channel both were on the njcpa.org/tech talk, YouTube at NJCPA Tech Talk podcast. And if you are a member of the NJCPA, which I hope you all are, join the Emerging Technologies interest group at njcpa.org/groups. It was a pleasure having you on today, and I
It's
hope to have
fun.
you on. Yeah, it was absolutely fun. Now, who thought talking about taxes could be fun on a podcast? But it absolutely was. Have to have you on. Hopefully after we get some more clarity on
That would
these
be
issues.
nice. Yeah, whenever that is.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, Nicole. It was awesome having you on. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sean.